Welcome to the Change Order Request webinar. Today we'll be sharing with you new steps for processing a change order. Please note that all mics have been muted with the exception of the presenters. Good morning, everyone. I'm Courtney Alston, your host, and today we have Mark Selman and Gail of Purchasing Services joining us today on this webinar. And we also have our moderator, Jackie Treschel, with us as well. Today, we will go through the presentation and, of course, have time for Q&A at the end. Please use the chat window to type your questions, and we will answer them in the order they are received in the formal Q&A session. Also, this webinar is being recorded and will be posted to ccinfo.unc.edu. The reason we are here is because the information entered for submitting a change order request is changing. But before we go to today's topic, let's take a moment to discuss why these changes are happening. Purchasing Services is wanting a more consistent way for all campus users to request change orders. So ultimately, this new process will be more efficient because campus users will provide all the necessary information on the front end of the request instead of submitting the request and the purchasing agent having to follow up. Hopefully, this will reduce the amount of time a change order request has to process through workflow. And today, we'll go over step by step of how to submit a change order request to reduce the quantity or amount on a PO, reduce a PO line, and request chart fill changes for all invoices going forward, increase the quantity on a PO line, increase a PO line, and request chart fill changes for all invoices going forward. And lastly, liquidating the total PO amount. We will be sharing a significant amount of information. However, there's no need to worry if you are short on time or if you get interrupted during the webinar. The information we cover, along with screenshots and step-by-step instructions, will be made available in the purchase requisitions and receiving student guide. And we just want to do a quick poll to find out how frequently you all may be processing or rather entering change order requests. So how often do you enter a change order request? Is it every day, once a week, once a month, once in a blue moon? Or you might be saying, what is a change order request? All of those answers. We just kind of want to see where everyone is. Okay, once in a blue moon seems to be leading, with once a month close behind. Okay, looks like we're settling in kind of on once a month, once in a blue moon being how frequently you all might be entering change order request. So with that, like I said, remember, we'll have step-by-step instructions available in the student guide, and this webinar will give you an introduction to these new changes.
All right. You ready to close that?
Yes.
Okay.
So things to remember. Before we dig in, let's remember that a change order request is used to make changes to a purchase order, not quite a purchase requisition. Change order requests are processed through the purchase requisition form, which serves as the change order request. This element of initiating a change order request has not changed. If you need to make changes to a purchase requisition, you can do so by making edits to the original purchase requisition without having to submit a change order request. But you will want to make sure those changes are made before it is sourced, because once a PR is sourced, you will need to submit changes via a change order request. Also, you must provide documentation of why you are submitting a change order request, and you can do that by submitting it as an attachment, or you can add it in a note in the header and comment section as well. So now let's get going. The first item we will cover for change order requests is reducing the amount or quantity on a PO line. For this and all other change requests, you will begin in Connect Carolina the same as you would before by following the menu path to create a new requisition. And we have Michelle. Michelle is on the phone with her executive director, who is requesting that she reduce the number of microscopes ordered. Their department recently received a grant that will cover the cost of 5 of the microscopes. For this type of change, Michelle will need to follow the steps to reduce the quantity on a PO line. We will begin on the Add Items and Services tab. On this tab, there are a few elements that need attention. In the top section, you will enter the description of the item that needs to be changed. It's helpful to use the exact same description you used in the original purchase requisition. For the price and quantity, you must enter 1 for the quantity and enter $0 for the price. Then you want to continue on by entering the category, vendor ID, vendor name, and the unit of measure. Now, in the additional information section, you must note the PO number, line number impacted, and the difference in the quantity. For example, we've entered reduce PO number 3854832819, line 1 by quantity of 5. PO line is currently 15 and will be a quantity of 10 after decrease. Then you want to click Add Item. Once you click Add Item, you will see a pop-up for you to confirm that there is no charge from line 1. Here you want to click Yes. Then you're going to navigate to the Review and Submit tab of the requisition. On the Review and Submit tab, there are 2 particular areas that require attention: the requisition name and the comment section. For the requisition name, it should be titled Change Order for PO Number, and then enter the PO number. In the comment section, you should enter the exact same. Then click Pre-Check Budget. You will see a pop-up notifying you that the requisition will be saved in an open status once you click OK. Then, of course, you want to click OK. This will allow you then to continue to process your change order request by clicking Save and Submit. Next, we will discuss reducing a PO line and requesting chart field changes for all invoices going forward. We have Michelle again, and she has received a notice that another department would like to have access and use some of their microscopes they're purchasing. The department has offered to share the cost of the purchase. For this type of change, Michelle will need to reduce the PO line and request chart field changes for all invoices going forward. To start, enter the description of the item that needs to be changed. Again, it's helpful to use the exact same description used on the PO. For the price, the amount should always be 0, and the quantity will always be 1 if you are decreasing the PO line quantity or dollar amount. Then enter the vendor number, vendor name, unit of measure, and select the category that most accurately describes the item. In the additional information section, you'll enter one of 2 types of statements. To reduce the amount, you must reference the original PO number and the line number that requires change. You will also enter the dollar amount of the increase for that line item. Then you will note the current total amount of the PO, followed by what should be the new total dollar amount of the PO after the decrease. The other option for when you are reducing the quantity would be to reduce the quantity. You must reference the original PO number and the line number that requires a change. You will also enter the quantity of decrease for that line item. Then you will note the current total quantity of the PO, followed by what should be the new quantity amount of the PO after the decrease. In the example, we are decreasing the amount of the PO. Then you want to click Add Item. After clicking Add Item, you will see a pop-up for you to confirm that there is no charge for line 1 item. Here you want to click Yes, and for this scenario, you'll need to add another line item, so you will remain on the Add Items and Services tab for now. For our next line item, much of the information will be the same. However, particular changes should be made to the item's description, price, quantity, and additional information section. Also, you will want to note that for the one-time purchase of a commodity, receiving an invoice is entered by quantity. In the top section, you will enter the description of the item that needs to be changed. And it's helpful here again to use the exact same description used on the original purchase requisition. Then be sure to enter the phrase chart field change afterwards. For the price, you will enter the total amount to pre-encumber on the new chart field string. If you are receiving by quantity, enter the price per unit. For the quantity, enter 1 if you are receiving by amount. If you are receiving by quantity, enter the quantity that you are increasing by. Then, in the additional information section, you will need to include a statement similar to the one noted on the screen. This line represents amount left to bill from PO line 1 after factoring in a $20,000 reduction and the amount that has already been billed on the line, $5,000. The amount should be $25,000 against the new chart field string. Then you want to click Add Item. Now you're ready to move on to the Review and Submit tab. On this tab, we'll go through several steps. For the requisition name, it should be titled Change Order for PO number, and then enter the PO number. In the comment section, you should enter the same information. Now you will begin making edits to the chart field information for line 1. Open the line by clicking on the gray arrow beside line 1 to expand the section. Your accounting lines are now open. Then click on Chart Field 2 tab to reveal your chart field information. It is here that you will verify that this is the same chart field that was used in the original PO line. If it is not, enter the original chart field string. Now you will begin making edits to the chart field information on line 2. Do this by clicking on the gray arrow beside line 2, just like you did for line 1. Now your accounting lines are open for line 2. Click on the Chart Field 2 tab to enter the new chart field string for line 2. This chart field should be the new chart field string that will be used for the remaining monies. After you have entered the new chart field string, click Pre-Check Budget. You will then see a pop-up notifying you that your requisition will be saved in an open status once you click OK. Click OK. Then you will continue the process of completing your change order request by clicking Save and Submit. We are about halfway through, and we are now going to go over increasing the quantity on a PO line. And for this scenario, we have Edward. Edward submitted a requisition and a PO has been issued for a member of his staff. On the original, he ordered 5 microscopes. Today, he was notified that his department hired 5 new researchers and needs 5 more microscopes. For this type of change, Edward will need to follow the steps to increase the quantity on a PO line. Here again, you will want to remember that for one-time purchase of a commodity, receiving an invoice is entered by quantity. When increasing the quantity of a PO line, the beginning of the process is similar to others, but differences do exist. Begin by entering the description of the line item that needs to be changed. Again, it's helpful to use the exact same description used on the original PO. For the price, enter the amount of the increase or the price per unit if increasing the quantity. For the quantity, enter a 1 if you are receiving by amount. If receiving by quantity, enter the quantity that you are increasing by. Then enter the category, vendor ID, vendor name, and unit of measure. In the additional information section, you must note the PO number, line number impacted, and the difference in the quantity. For example, we have entered increase PO number 847-962-4468, line 1 by quantity of 5. PO line is currently quantity of 10 and will be quantity of 15 after increase. Then you'll want to click Add Item. Then proceed by clicking on the Review and Submit tab. Now you will begin making edits to the chart field information. Do this by clicking on the gray arrow beside line 1. Then click on the Chart Fields To tab. After clicking on Chart Fields To tab, you will verify that the chart field information there is what you would like to use. You can change it to a new chart field string, but please stay tuned as we will cover how to do this in the next section of our webinar. We will remain on this page as you will need to make some additional edits. For the requisition name, it should be titled Change Order for PO Number and then enter the PO number. In the comments section, you should enter the same information. Then click Pre-Check Budget. You will then see a pop-up notifying you that your requisition will be saved in an open status once you click OK. Then click OK. You will continue the process of completing your change order request by clicking Save and Submit. Now we will go through the steps of increasing a PO line and requesting chart field changes for all invoices going forward. Edward now realizes that the PO he requested changes to in scenario 3 require more money than what is on the original chart field string. For this type of change, Edward will need to follow the process to increase the PO line and request chart field changes for all invoices going forward. Begin by entering the description of the item that needs to be changed. Again, it is helpful to use the exact same description used on the original PO. For the price, enter the amount of the increase or the price per unit if increasing the quantity. For the quantity, enter a 1 if you are receiving by amount. If you're receiving by quantity, enter the quantity that you are increasing by. Then you'll want to enter the vendor number, vendor name, unit of measure, and select the category that most accurately describes the item. In the additional information section, you will enter one of 2 types of statements. To increase the amount, you must reference the original PO number and the line number that requires a change. You will also enter the dollar amount of the increase for that line item. Then you will note the current total amount of the PO, followed by what should be the new total dollar amount of the PO after the increase. The other option is for when you are increasing the quantity. To increase the quantity, you must reference the original PO number and the line number that requires a change. You will also enter the quantity of increase for that line item. Then you will note the current total quantity of the PO, followed by what should be the new quantity of the PO after the increase. In the example, we are increasing the amount of the PO. After that, you'll want to click Add Item. You will then see a pop-up for you to confirm that there is no change for line item 1. Click Yes. After clicking Yes, you'll want to add another line item to note the chart field changes, so you will remain on the Add Items and Services tab. In the top section, you will enter the description of the item that needs to be changed. It's helpful to use the same exact description used on the original purchase requisition. Then you will add the phrase chart field change behind it. For the price, you will enter the total amount remaining on the PO combined with the amount of increase. This will encumber on the new chart field string. For quantity, enter a 1 if you are receiving by amount. If you are receiving by quantity, enter the quantity that you are carrying over from the original PO combined with the quantity you are increasing by. Enter the category, vendor ID, vendor name, and of course the unit of measure. Then in the additional information section, you will need to include a statement similar to the one noted on the screen. This line represents the amount left to build to new chart field string from PO line 1 of $6,500 plus the amount of increase of $10,500. The amount on this line should be $17,000. Then click Add Item and move to the Review and Submit tab. In the comments section, you should enter the same information. Now you will begin making edits to the chart field information. Click on the gray arrow beside line 1 to expand the section. Then click on the Chart Field 2 tab to reveal your chart field information. It is here that you will verify that it is the same chart field that was used on the original PO line. If it's not, enter the original chart field string. Now you will begin making edits to the chart field information on line 2. Click on the gray arrow beside line 2 to expand the section. Now you will click on the Chart Field 2 tab. Here, you can change the chart field string to the new chart field string that will now be used for this line. Then you will click Pre-Check Budget. You will then see a pop-up notifying you that your requisition will be saved in an open status once you click OK. Then click OK. Then you will continue to process the completion of your change order request by clicking Save and Submit. Lastly, we will review the process of liquidating the total PO amount. When liquidating a PO, it is important to remember that payments for all vouchers posted to a PO have to be made in order for a PO to be liquidated. Here we have Alice, and Alice just finished receiving the last items on a PO. After reviewing the financial records associated with the PO, she noted that she has $20,000 remaining. She would like to make these funds available for other purchases for her department. For this type of change, Alice will need to liquidate the total PO amount. Should you need to liquidate a PO you will begin just as you have in the other examples. For the description, you will enter entire PO. In this case, the price will be 0 and the quantity will be 1. Then continue by entering in the category, vendor ID, vendor name, and the unit of measure. Then, in the additional information section, you will reference the PO number and the current amount remaining on the PO that needs complete liquidation. Then click Add Item. You will then see a pop-up for you to confirm that there is no charge for line 1 item. Click Yes. Then you will need to navigate to the Review and Submit tab of the requisition. Now we are on the Review and Submit tab. For the requisition name, it should be titled Change Order for PO number, and then enter the PO number. In the comment section, you should enter the same information. Then click Pre-Check Budget. You will then see a pop-up notifying you that your requisition will be saved in an open status once you click OK. Click OK. Then you will continue the process of completing your change order request by clicking Save and Submit. The items that we have covered today will be available in the Purchase Requisition and Receiving Student Guide that will be posted on CC Info. Remember though, a change order request is used to make changes to a purchase order. It is also important to contact the buyer associated with the PO to ensure that the PO and any related documents are updated properly. Also, you must review all receipts and vouchers related to the PO prior to putting in a request to ensure that your numbers are correct. Now it's time for questions and answers. We have Steve Gale and Mark Silman to provide answers and insight related to change order requests. So let's see what's going on in the chat window with Jackie.
All right. So we had one question during a scenario from Robin asking why the total was less after the increase. But Chris actually chimed in and answered it and said because you were transferring $6,500 to a new chart field. So I think that answers that one.
Yes.
We don't need to go back. We have a question from Marcia. It says, why is it when I do a change order and add quantity to an existing line in a PO, a brand new line is created?
I think that might be a question for...
Yeah, that's because we have to copy that change request into the existing PO. And when that happens, that adds that line. But if I'm just increasing the original line, after I copy the change order request requisition line into the PO, I go back to that line 1 and increase the quantity. And then I cancel the line that was brought in from the change request. But that's just kind of a system thing. That's how the system works, because we have to copy the change request into the PO.
Okay.
And it carries those lines on that change request into the PO itself.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks. The next question from Ferris is, can this process be used to change the unit cost of a line item?
No, that would have to be a brand new line where, just like Steve said, we would have to go in, append the change order rec to the PO, thereby creating a new line, and then going up and canceling out the other line that you were trying to change.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Troy has a question. Currently, change order requisitions are being canceled when the change order is processed. This makes it unclear if the change has been applied. Will requisitions show as a PO dispatched following this process?
Yes.
They will?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Yes, because we have to save and dispatch the PO after we make the change to it.
Okay. Max has a question. Is there a process to submit a request to change receiving by quantity or amount or should that still be done via personal correspondence?
That's probably better left to an email or a call. Most of the time when we get those type of requests, they're coming to us from disbursement services or accounts payable. Like if there's a freight line, for example, disbursement might want us to change that freight line to a amount only.
Okay.
So that the invoicing and the receiving for that freight line can be entered by the dollar amount.
Or we do have, and I think I know who this Max is, where you've set up your requisition for 12 equal payments, and on payment number 3 or 4 or 5, the vendor throws you a curveball by changing the amount, whereby you can't then go in and pick it up by quantity or receive it by quantity. For something like that, you actually do need to talk to the buyer to see what can be done, because once a receipt is in or a payment has been made, we can't just arbitrarily change the lines. It may be better to just cancel that line and create a new one with a change order, or just close out the whole PO and start again if it's early on in the life of the PO.
Okay. The next question is, when will the new student guide be posted?
We are making some additional edits to it, so we'll be working hard next week to get that new student guide ready and available. And I would anticipate us being able to send an email out to campus letting them know once that new student guide has been posted and ready.
Okay. Renee asked, if I'm increasing the unit price only on a particular line, why is the money not added to the previous line? A new line is always created even though we're using the same chartfield string.
That's because we don't know what chartfield string you had on the previous line, because it doesn't show up without going through about 4 or 5 clicks in PeopleSoft. So it is easier, less timely, for us just to append the line and move on with it.
Okay. Gail asked, will this information be available at the end of this session?
The webinar will be posted online either later this afternoon or Monday morning. So it will be posted online, and as I mentioned before, we are making some additional edits to the student guide, and I'm believing that will be released next week.
Okay. Charlotta has a question, a scenario actually. If we have a PO for $7,500 and voucher paid on $7,500, then we come to know that there's an additional $2,000 to be paid on the same PO. Can I request a change request to increase the PO?
As long as
if the line has already paid, you would have to add a new line to the PO, and if the PO is closed or completed, you can't do anything to it.
Okay.
So yes, that can be done.
All right. Robin has a question. What's the easiest way to check whether an existing PO is being distributed by quantity or amount?
Going to manage requisitions. You should be able to go into managed requisitions and see whether it's by amount or by quantity.
Okay. Catherine said, I like to include vendor name as well as PO number in the requisition name. So I think that's just a comment there.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
I would say that whenever you do a change request, a very important item, which I know you went over in detail, we have to know what PO you're changing. So that has to be communicated to us on that requisition.
So that seems like a pretty important element. Definitely reference that PO number in the header comments in your additional information section whenever you are submitting a change order request.
Right.
All right. Marcia said, please explain a little more. When adding quantity to an existing line, sometimes it's added to that existing line on some of my POs, and sometimes a new line is created. Does it depend on who receives it? It is never done the same each time.
Each buyer does have their own way of doing a change order. On the commodity side, it's real easy to do the change orders because it's always a quantity issue, not an amount. On the services side, since a lot of them roll over from year to year, they're continual. We found that when we went back and changed the line and then came in and deleted the appended line, it was messing with the KK rollover. So we stopped doing it about 3 months after we started doing PeopleSoft. So you will have differences from the buyers because of what effect your change order has on the PO.
Okay.
Another question from Catherine. Why does the PO not show the chart field string?
Good question. Wasn't programmed that way.
All right. Robin asked, what constitutes adequate documentation for the reason we're requesting the change?
You have to be able to paint us a clear picture of why you are making the change. You can't just say add $50, add $200. We have to have a basic reason for why you are adding money to that purchase order.
And that can usually be covered in your narrative when you enter your comments, in the header comments, or in the additional information section. You don't necessarily need to send us a Word file detailing what kind of change you're trying to make.
Okay.
It can be covered in the header comments or the additional information section.
Okay, so just to be clear, I think header comments is where you all are readily able to see information.
Yes.
So if it's something really important related to that change order, put in the header comments. And if they feel the need to provide additional information beyond that, they can submit an attachment with it.
Sure.
Okay.
Because some of those fields are limited to as to how many words you can type in there.
Okay.
Which actually goes to our next comment from Aaron, expanding on Catherine's comment. Is there any way to increase the character numbers allowed in the requisition name field? We are currently limited to 30 characters.
That would be a programming request that you'd have to submit a remedy ticket for.
Okay. Max said clarification needed. For a straight chart field change, are 2 lines needed on the change order? Original line with the chart field string at a $0 amount and new line with total to encumbered new fund/source, or is a single line with the new chart field string sufficient?
Well, I would say if you're trying to replace a line on a PO with a different chart field string, the original PO line is going to have to be canceled, okay? And then a new line will need to be added to include that new chart field string. So it'll basically be a duplicate line of the first original line, but it's going to have the new chart field string.
Okay. John chimed in and said you can see the chart field information under the PO inquiry by looking at the distribution schedule.
Is that John Medlin?
It is John Medlin.
Thanks, John.
Mike sent a question, said, to increase security, will we be allowed to input the change orders using Wingdings format?
Again, that's a programming question. If that's what you'd like to do, submit a remedy ticket and see what the programmers say.
All right. Charlutha has she said, thank you for answering her question, but she wanted to confirm if voucher of $7,500 is paid on PO of $7,500, does it mean the PO is liquidated? Any additional payments, we need to issue a new PO and not a change order?
We don't automatically liquidate your PO when the payment has been made.
The system does that.
There is a program that runs in the background of PeopleSoft that when it sees the PO amount, the receiving amount, and the invoice and payment amount match, it automatically purges the PO out of the active purchase file and into the history file. We don't know when that runs. We don't know when it happens. There are some POs that hang out there for months after final payment and some that disappear within a couple hours. You have to go out and look at your PO, see if it is still active to know whether you need to do a change order or a new requisition
For a new PO.
for a new PO. And I will tell you, if the tail end invoice is under $5,000, if you've determined that that PO is closed, you might as well just go ahead and pay for it with a voucher.
Okay. Janice was commenting back to John that you could also print the PO. I think that was for finding the chart field information. Ferris said, currently we cannot submit change orders on projects that are closed, which can be a problem when we are trying to liquidate an encumbrance. Will we be allowed to do this?
No, because if the PO is closed, it's no longer a purchase action. It's an AP action, and you have to get with accountant to get that taken care of and get it off your reports.
Well, also, if he's talking about a grant, if the project ID, the project has ended and the PO is completed, we can't touch the PO. So I think in some cases, OSR can reopen that project ID temporarily. So in some cases, we can make changes after the
If we
project is
reopen the
closed.
PO too.
Well, if the PO is not completed already, yes.
Okay. Ferris asked another question. Do these change order requests work on ePro catalog orders just as well as they do with special item orders?
Yeah.
No, they do not. I'm getting shaken heads all around here. Sheila said, is a new quote not needed for change orders for services?
What kind of change order?
Sheila, it all depends. If that change is more than half, again, the amount of the original PO, then yes, we require some kind of quote or a really good explanation as to why it has increased that much. What unforeseen condition was out there that caused it to increase by that amount. But generally, no. All we need is a basic, simple, concise comment as to why that change is necessary.
All right. Renee asked, we're hearing submit a remedy ticket numerous times. Who do we submit a remedy ticket to? The chart field string is very important to see on the PO. Tell us who we need to send the remedy ticket to, please.
ITS.
I would say the ITS, Renee.
Help desk.
Somebody write down.
The help desk just chimed in and said, send it to the business systems help desk.
Perfect.
And they'll be able to route it from there. Evelyn asked a question, or actually provided a tip, it looks like. It says, it might help to add an additional $1 to the PO. It keeps it open until you say so.
That is correct.
The next question was, who will the remedy ticket route to? And that somebody added in the help information in there as well. Anitra said, will active POs with funds still on them roll over into the new fiscal year? Since PeopleSoft, I've had to completely create a new PO because the previous one was closed out at year end.
Supposedly, if there is funding, valid funding on the purchase order when we roll, they are supposed to roll. I'll emphasize supposed.
Right. Ferris looks like gave us another tip for Renee to see the chart field string on the PO. If you look at it through PO inquiry module, click view approvals and then view printable version to see the PO with chart field string. So thanks for that tip, Ferris. All right, so there are no more questions in the chat window right now. Oh, I spoke too soon. Phyllis said, did you say go through PO inquiry in order to see the new money amount that has been increased?
Well, it'll let you look at the PO as it currently exists.
Okay.
So whatever point in time that is, yes.
You'd be able to see that?
Sure.
All right. Gail said, thank you all for a wonderful session.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. And is there any more helpful tips or information that you'd like to share before we close out our session?
Yeah, one thing I noticed we didn't put in this literature, it's very important when you're doing your requisition and or change order requisition to give us your point of contact's information, their name, their email, and their phone number if you have it, so we know who to talk to if there's any issues with your procurement.
You're talking about the vendor or?
Vendor.
For the vendor, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Angelina asked, 10 days to process the PO. Will the change start the 10 days over?
I don't understand the
They
question.
don't understand your question.
Angelina, if you could give us a little more information. So while we're waiting on Angelina to chime in, Sheila said, where's the best place to add that contact info?
In the header comment box.
All right. Sheila said, thanks. Troy said, follow up to Mark's comment on KK Ledger issues. Will this process facilitate line reductions for capital project purchase orders?
I don't know, Mr. Morris. You can call me offline and we can try and get a programmer to talk about that.
Okay. Angelina said the original PO, if you have 10 days to process it, is that correct? So how long will it take to process the change order linked to the original PO?
I would say change orders can usually be turned around in a day.
Okay.
They don't take a lot of time.
To answer that, we try and do all the requisitions in requisition number sequence as they come in, first come, first serve. So even though a change order is very simple in nature and should take only a few days, depending on the workload in our queue, it could take 7 to 10 days to do a simple change order. But we do try and get them out as fast as possible. If you have an issue where you're trying to get a payment out the door, the change order is the only thing holding it up, then send us an email and explain the situation briefly. We don't need a long document or anything. Just tell us what the issue is and we'll try and get it out a little quicker.
And when they send you that email, they definitely need to reference that PO number.
Yes,
Correct?
we can't
Yes.
look anything up without the PO number or a rec number.
Okay.
All right. Angelina said, thanks. All right. Any other questions? Not seeing anything come in.
Okay.
Oh. Are there any metrics on volume of POs since go live?
Somebody's probably got them somewhere, but we don't have it. Are you saying how many POs have been done by individual buyers or the whole buying unit as a total over a year?
I think we do keep metrics as to certain types of orders that we do, but we don't necessarily,
We don't publish
we
it.
don't have access to those, but someone in our office is tracking those type of metrics.
Yeah, he was looking for total for the year.
Okay.
I would say call our purchasing director. He probably has that information.
Okay.
Any other questions coming up there, Jackie?
Well, we got another one that said, is there a webinar on VISPing and receiving?
I am not aware of a webinar on VISPing and receiving. However, we do cover how to receive on a PO in the purchase requisitions and receiving class.
Okay.
And in the student guide, there are step-by-step instructions on how to receive and how to submit information to VISP.
Okay. All right. Chris said you all do an amazing job. Thanks.
Thank you.
Paula said, if I can't liquidate an amount from the PO and has been completed from the last year, how can I clear the encumbered?
If the PO's completed, there should not be an encumbrance.
But sometimes the money shows up on their
There may be
financial reports, which means they have to get with accountant services.
Are you
Shandrika's
talking
group.
about a pre-encumbrance amount on the requisition?
It could be a pre-encumbrance amount, it could be a leftover amount. It's just an amount that didn't drop when the program tried to purge it.
Even though the PO's showing completed and
PO shows complete, but it still has money hanging.
so what
For
are they-
that, you have to get with Accountant Services, Shandrika Rao's group. And I don't know if that's by email or whatever. I'm not sure how they prefer being contacted.
Robin said, Holly, yeah, you'd have to put in a ticket for that problem.
Okay.
And the Business Systems Help Desk chimed in and said, you can always call 962-HELP, option 2.
Okay.
All right, I don't see any more questions in here, so that may be a good segue.
Okay, well, once again, I do want to thank, Mark Silman and Steve Gale for joining us today and the support of our moderator. I think we have one more question that just came in.
We got one more. It says, if the invoice amount is lower than the PO amount and no additional invoices will be submitted, what is the best way to clear out the PO?
You do a change order request and
To liquidate.
liquidation.
Change order request to liquidate or close out the PO.
All right, which I think was scenario 5 that Courtney covered.
Scenario 5, and feel free to reference this webinar once you're needing to liquidate that PO, and also those steps will be covered in the student guide as well.
All right.
All right, so thank you all for attending. We do want to share some additional resources that might be helpful to you. For additional information, you can visit our Connect Carolina information page at ccinfo.unc.edu. If you have questions regarding Connect Carolina, you can send an email to cc_communications@unc.edu. We also have training available, and that's through, you can send an email to connectcarolina_training@unc.edu.
And for both of those, for questions and training, those are sort of general questions. If you have specific help questions that you need, the best place to go is to help.unc.edu or 962-HELP. And for finance, it's option 2.
And we always encourage individuals to subscribe to the Connect Carolina newsletter. That's where you can stay up to date with new features, information, potential outages, other webinars that might be coming up. So we do encourage you to subscribe there. It only takes a few seconds. And also, just as Jackie mentioned, we do have that help option as well at help.unc.edu. And of course, 962-HELP. We do thank you for attending. And once again, this webinar will be posted on CC Info.
Thanks, everyone.